wonderful dreams there. And then the other thing I do is just go down hi Jan and visitor and Carlos, and I'll just tell you the other quick things and we'll get started.
Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, hi Tim. Then I'm just responding to you, Marina, on the Marina had this, and maybe she can tell us about it after 11. Is the other thing I do is, of course, this just guided thing down into the depths through using Inanna as going through 7 gates. Then I'll do a written dialogue, which, you know, one of them is going to have something happen in it. And then the fourth one, which I just started doing, was just gazing into the darkness and letting it animate. And you know what you usually see is just a round thing of light, you know, just a round thing of light. And then I see little silhouettes, like trees or like people, or sometimes it turns into an eye and then it turns into a face, you know. But that's the idea, and we're going to discuss that today of gazing into the darkness. But you know, before we started, I just wanted to do one quick follow up on the doubleness thing that I forgot to mention last time. It was so beautiful.
Quick question before you mention that. Do you also engage in conversation with the dark? I know last time you spoke about lying on your stomach and looking
well,
at the
yes,
dark.
I do. Yes, I do, but then I can't ever remember those.
Yes.
I remember parts of them, but I don't. I mean, but you know, it's always a wonderful. Hi, Adam. I do a wonderful dialogue that then I can't remember it at all. You know, I mean, okay, I remember parts of it,
yes,
but I do it anyway. And I do get some answers, and, you know, I think they would come to me later if I, you know, did them. But anyway, this was in Ion about the double aspect, you know, our double aspect. There's you and someone else, and this idea of that, you know, you're the earth going around the sun, not the sun going around the earth. So and this is something that is really, you know, image as in Christ Pantocrator, and we saw that last time. But anyway, it's Mary. This is from Pistis of Sophia. Mary says to Jesus, "When thou wert a child, before the Spirit had descended upon you, you were in the vineyard with Joseph, the Spirit came down from the height and came to me in the house. And it looked exactly like you. I didn't know him, but thought he was you. And he said to me, 'Where is Jesus, my brother, that I may go to meet him?' And when he had said this to me, I was in doubt and thought it was a phantom tempting me. I seized him and bound him to the foot of the bed, which was in my house, until I had gone to find you in the field with Joseph, and putting up the vine poles. You heard me saying this to Joseph, and you were joyful and said, 'Where is he that I may see him?' And it came to pass, when Joseph heard you say these words, he was disturbed. But we went up together, entered into the house, and found the Spirit bound to the bed. And we gazed upon him and you, and found that you were exactly like him. And he that was bound to the bed was unloosed, embraced thee, and kissed thee, and thou didst also kiss him, and you became one." Then they became one being. So, I mean, that's just what they said was this appears from the context of the fragment that Jesus is the truth sprouting from the earth. That's a very unusual description of this figure. You know, this religious rabbi who was just flooded with the images of reborn gods and you know, and sacrificed gods and the sons of gods in at the turn of the millennium. You know, the text says, "Truth is the power which issued from thee when thou wast in the lowest regions of chaos. Truth sprouted out of the earth because thou were in the lower regions of chaos." So it's just this idea of our own truth, our acorn. You know, we're an acorn that becomes an oak, or we're a root that becomes a tulip, or whatever. You know. But anyway, I wanted to. We'll just go over. I was telling Gary before we started this dialogue. I mean, well, it's a vision of Elijah and Salome is just, and I hope I can do it justice, but it's so profound. It's just incredibly profound, and it doesn't appear so on first reading, but it really is. So anyway, he has one. This is one of his first real visions. The others were more dreams, and he first sinks down, finds himself lying against a rock in the dark depths, boulders all around, an old man to his left with a gray beard, wearing an ornamental or oriental robe, probably an old prophet. His right hand is stretched out as if he were teaching. A big black serpent lay at his feet. And in the background, a house with columns, a beautiful young maiden steps out. The daughter of the old man, she walks up to his side. Is she blind? I look in astonishment and rise. She takes my hand. We walk to the house. At the foot of the sheer walk walls, the serpent creeps behind us. Obscure darkness inside, a carpet in a bleak hall, on a small black table, a bright water-colored crystal. Okay, well now this is the crystal of meditation and concentration. It's kind of like the alchemical flask. It's the size of a fist that attracts me. Gleams of color radiated from it, and now it would get difficult. Okay. Now, then he sees three visions come out of the crystal. One is Eve under the tree with the serpent before it. Well, this is kind of representing Salome, and it is the disobedience that's required to the ruling principle in order for development to begin. And the ruling principle is the dominant function. And we must be disobedient against the dominant function before what is undeveloped, which is the part of the unconscious that is the inferior function, which for some mysterious reason is what turns us from temporal beings into beings that have one foot in both worlds. I mean, it's developing this unconscious function, which is just this is where the anima and animus reside. This is where the self resides. This is where the image realm resides. This is where the great feminine resides. It's just and the everything resides there, you know. And through a disobedience to the ruling principle, you know, this is how. And it's always something like it's the in the fairy tales, it's the son who is rejected, or the fool who does this. So in this case, we have Eve and Salome, not Mary, the mother of God, the obedient one. You know, she can't help us develop. Okay, and the serpent before it. Now, the serpent before it and Eve both represent the way without intention. You know, the way without either purpose or intention. Because it's like Parsifal to find the Grail Castle, the only way he can find it is to let go of the reins, let go of the ruling principle, and let the serpent and the feminine, or the serpent and the animus, lead him to find the castle, or find this under valued, this undeveloped aspect of himself. So we'll get into that a little bit later. And then he sees a wonderful bluish black sea, a rocky coast, a ship with a red sail passes by. It's Odysseus and his companions. Now, why would this follow? From what Eve is offering us, this temptation, comes the great adventure. Okay. Eve, the first image is this temptation. Well, Salome is a great temptation too. So is Eve. Eve tempts Adam. He then disobeys the ruling principle, and life begins. Up until that, nothing happens. They live in a timeless realm of no struggle. And then there is a poster behind it, and there's some inconsistency on this, because later Jung says that he says in the Black Books that it's old man with a child, but later in the Red Book he says it's the Madonna with the child, or Mary with the child. Okay, but anyway, it is an older figure with a young child, and so this is the. What do we have? We've got the disobedience to the ruling principle, represented by Eve, or by Salome, with the serpent as her companion. The image of the bluish black sea, Odysseus and his companions, the beginning of the adventure. This is such a mysterious road that you follow on this realm of I don't know. It's just doing this it's a wonderful, rich journey, but it's very mysterious. Where does it lead, and what is this all about? And then the picture of the old man with the child. Now, this is actually probably more true as a division, because it kind of represents what you would see in an alchemical emblem, of the divine child that is born of the king. It's the new king, that's going to succeed the old ruling principle. So that's, I think, why he's seeing the old man with the child. He's not Mary with the child. It's the old king and the new king. Okay, the old principle and this new principle. I think that's so there is a progression there in these three visions. Okay, all right. Then he peers into the hall, glittering things, weapons, gemstones. Okay, now Jung says later, this is really happening now. Now, of course, what he says is the way he brought it forth is what we were talking about just a second ago, is by peering into darkness and letting it animate itself. So the fact that there is this glittering law is also an aspect of animating the darkness within, letting it shine, and new aspects appear. But then in the background, a beautiful garden, a door opens with a beautiful garden with gleaming sunlight, and we step outside, and there's blooming bushes of red pomegranates, shady fountain, and the old man says, "Do you know my land?" This is a very interesting question. This is this strange place we're going to. It's always represented usually by a foreign country or something. It's a place that we've never been before. I'm a stranger here, Young says, and everything seems strange to me, anxious and as a dream. May I ask, who are you? And he says, I am Elijah, and this is my daughter Salome. And he says, the daughter of Herod, the bloodthirsty woman. He says, why do you judge so harshly? You see that she is blind, and my daughter, the daughter of the prophet. And the prophet, is very similar to the voice within. It's not someone, even in biblical prophecy, a prophet is not someone who prophesies the future. Never, he speaks. He's the voice of the depths, and he speaks what needs to be said from the other side, from the unconscious realm, speaking to the consciousness, our conscious side. And he says, what miracle has, Young asks, what miracle has united you? It's no miracle. It was so from the beginning. My wisdom and my daughter are one. Okay, now what Elijah is really saying here, he's talking about Young. Young's logos and eros are unseparated. This is the problem that we're facing in this vision, is that Young's logos and eros are one. Well, they're not supposed to be one. They're supposed to be two. That's why she's blind, or she's in an incomplete example of eros. I am shocked and incapable of grasping it. Consider this: Elijah the prophet and Salome, the murderous and infamous dancer. Her blindness has made us, and Elijah says, her blindness has made us companions since time immemorial, father and daughter. He says, and Young says, forgive my astonishment. Am I truly in the underworld? And Elijah says, this is the house of dreams, or better, do not give it a name. And this is this comes up later too. That don't give this a name. Salome turns to me and she says, do you love me? Now we're going to have this explained a little better later here in his explanation in the Red Book. But he means, do you want to sin with me? Do you want to be disobedient to the ruling principle with me? So in other words, by uniting with her, by sinning with the inferior, by loving and coupling with the inferior principle, or uniting with her, he's being disobedient to some ruling principle. But this is the only way anything can develop, and he says, I get scared and all the blood rushes to my heart. Well, how can I love you? How do you come to this question? I see only one thing. You are Salome, and your hands are stained with the blood of the Holy One. How should I love you? You will love me. Now, this is his inferior function telling him this. You will love me. This is the way he's going to become whole. And horror grabs him by the throat. I love you. Who gives you the right to such thoughts? And she says, I love you. Now, this is kind of it is Jung's anima, but it is also this incomplete eros. And he says, leave me be. I dread you, you beast. You do me wrong. Elijah is my father, and he knows the deepest mysteries. The walls of his house are made of precious stones. His wells hold healing water, and his deep eyes see the things of the future. And what wouldn't you give for a single look into the infinite unfolding of what is to come? In other words, to be whole, to this unbelievable magic of being in the Grail Castle, of letting go of your ruling principle, letting go of the reins of the horse, and going to the castle of the Grail, seeing the Grail maidens, being a resident there, and then this is your secret residence, and you're inextricably, that you find that this is your true home. Okay, to so and she says, what wouldn't you give for a single look into the infinite unfolding, the infinite unblooming of flowers, of what is to come? Are these not worth a sin for you? Are these not worth disobeying your dominant function and letting it go, of letting go the reins of the horse? And he says, your temptation is horrible. I long to be back in the upper world. This place is dreadful to me. How oppressive and heavy is the air. Well, he's really talking, the air is an oppressive and heavy because he's living in a dead world, of his own making, which is of no development of the psyche. There's no development. He might be learning things and stuff, but it doesn't possess all four functions. And we're going to find out that when we talk about logos and eros. And then he says he looks for Elijah. Mighty brows shade Elijah's eyes. And Elijah says, well, what do you want? The choice is yours. And he says, but I don't belong to the dead. I live in the light of day. Why should I torment myself with Salome? Don't I have enough of my own life to deal with? And then Elijah says, you heard what Salome said. I cannot believe you, the prophet, can recognize her as a daughter and a companion. Is she not engendered from heinous seed? Was she not vain greed and perverse lust? But she loved a holy man and shamefully shed his blood. She actually loved the treasure hard to attain. Now remember, Elijah is both John the Baptist and Elijah. They're the same person. When the disciples asked Jesus, so it isn't, the Messiah is not going to come until Elijah comes. And Jesus says, Elijah has come and men did not see him. No, knew him not. Well, he's talking about, they discovered later, he was talking about John the Baptist. So the Messiah can't come until Elijah returns. Elijah returned. And he's John the Baptist. So this blind or undeveloped aspect of Jung, just like Jung murders Siegfried, his highest value. This principle that's disobedient to the ruling principle, Salome, and like Eve was disobedient to the ruling principle. And both are accompanied by a serpent, by the way. In the case of Salome, hers is black. And we're going to meet them later, too, by the way, in a very dramatic scene where her blindness is cured by the snake, writhing around Jung. Jung becomes the Christ, has a lion face, and then she regains her sight. And this really means that that at this point, Eros was no longer under the subjugation of the prophet Elijah or Jung's ruling principle. At that point, she gains her sight, and that's because Eros is in Jung's psyche, at least in this vision, was no longer under the control of the ruling principle. You see, this is wonderful. Actually, it's just a wonderful vision. But anyway, he says, but Elijah said, but she loved a holy man. She loved the treasure hard to attain, and shamefully shed his blood, Jung says. No, I don't understand that exactly, other than it's a sacrifice of some type. And I think he does talk about it a little bit later in this, what we'll talk about. And Elijah says, don't interrupt me, my son. She loved the prophet of God who announced the new God to the world. Well, John the Baptist announced the new God to the world. Elijah announced the new God to the world. Young will announce the new God to the world too. She loved him. Do you understand that? For she is my daughter. Let me get this Jordy's here. Okay. Let's see. And then, do you think that because she is your daughter, that she loved John the Baptist? Do I understand you correctly? Yeah, I think that's what he's saying, is that she loves him. He is John the Baptist. And that's why he's defending her, I think. By her love, you shall know her. But how did she love him? Do you still call that love? Well, what else was it? Elijah says. But I'm horrified. Who wouldn't be horrified if Salome loved him? And then Elijah says, are you a coward? And besides, I and my daughter have been one since eternity. And they're not supposed to be one, though. You know, you pose dreadful riddles. How can it be that this unholy woman and you, the prophet of God, could be one? Why are you amazed? But you see it. You can see it with your own eyes. We are together. What I see with my eyes is exactly what I can't grasp. You, Elijah, who are a prophet, the mouth of God, and she, a bloodthirsty monster. You're the symbol of the most extreme contradiction. And we are together. We're not symbols. We're real and together. And then the black serpent rises up the tree and hides in the branches. Everything becomes gloomy and doubtful. Elijah and Salome rise. He leads her by the hand. Young stands hesitating. Elijah leads, waves with his hand. We go back into the hall. The crystal still shines dimly. I think again of the image of the Odysseus, which is this adventure, and how he passed the rocky island of the Sirens on his lengthy odyssey. He's starting to kind of get it. Should I or should I not? Elijah and Salome are silent. We come beneath the columns of the entrance. Doubt tears my heart apart. I don't know. It's so unreal. And yet a part of my longing remains behind. Will I come again? Will I find my way back to the house of the riddle? The way I did not seek and never expected. Salome loves me. Do I love her? I hear wild music of a tambourine, sultry moonlit night, and then I see the bloody staring head of the Holy One. Well, Young is a murderer too, just so you know. Fear seizes me. I mean, he murdered Siegfried. I rush out. I am surrounded by the dark night. I'm in the midst of boulders, and in the distance, water cascades over the cliffs. Who murdered the hero? She's one with the prophet, one with John. She's one with me? Yes, she is. Woe was she, the hand of God. I do not love her. I fear her. My knees tremble. And then a voice said, then you acknowledge her divine power. And he ends it by saying, must I love Salome? Okay, after this, we're going to go into that little essay that Young wrote about this. Does anyone have any comments before we jump into it? Or questions? I mean, I added some things there that weren't really in the text. But any questions?
Would Jung remember his previous visions until reaching this point? Is it like a progressive evolution in his being?
Yeah, well, yes, and you'll find in the black books that he progresses extremely rapidly. He uses the alchemical principle of relentless memory. He absolutely never forgets anything. Now, in the black books, of course, everything's written down. When it first didn't work, nothing was happening. He just would put in some old dreams, and then some lamentations and things like that. But the Jung was automatically permeable to the depths, with his mother's family, the Price works, all being mediums, and the fact that he had been extremely wounded by his rupture with Freud and is feeling greatly abandoned right now, had the rug ripped out from under him by himself, and through this great suffering also made the depths more permeable. I think, so, at least in my own case, I really never realized that I needed to do this work personally. I couldn't just be intellectualizing it only after experiencing great suffering myself. At that point, I turned, first to the I Ching, and then realized that the I Ching was absolutely real. And then I started turning more convincingly to active imagination and to my dreams, and giving them a lot more respect than I did previously. Okay. Well,
Thank you for sharing that. Yes.
yeah. Yeah. Well, hi, Jordy, too. Nice to see you. We can stop about 10:45 or 11 or so for just general questions. Adam, did you have anything? Gary didn't have anything. We could just.
No, today
Yeah,
I don't have anything.
yeah. Okay. Well, we'll just have general discussion. We can talk about anything. I think Marina can tell us a little bit about. She had an interesting experience this week, and Dawn, we'll do your dream. I saw that you had posted later, but not today. But we'll try to do it next week. But anyway, so Jung was just talking about this. This vision, which he can't really understand, and he's just trying to wrap his head around it, and he says it was more witnessed than experienced. It was one of his first mystery plays that he had experienced, through this is very early in his black books. I mean, I think this, I don't know if you can see this, but I mean, here's the day that he wrote the letter to Freud, and this dream appeared on or vision appeared on the 21st. So it was like maybe 8 weeks later, and it only looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, this is the 12th entry, I think, in the black book.
May I say something?
Yeah.
A couple of Freud students actually ended up dying after the breakup with him. It was psychologically very destructive. So I think this was the only way Jung could survive, that he had to start his inferior function and bring it out in the universe.
Well, yeah. Well, that's what we're going to find, that this was like all misfortunes. They're fortunate. They have a silver lining.
Yes.
Like
Thank
a
you.
fortune. They're actually. That's what Schopenhauer says. When you look back on your life, and all the horrible things that happened, each one opened doors where there were no doors before, and this wouldn't have happened if that hadn't happened. And sometimes, I'm
Yes,
sure
true. Thank you.
there's times when it doesn't happen. Well, anyway, he's saying it portrayed, and he's trying. Jung is fabulous at this. This is what James Hollis said. He's the He's the greatest symbolic thinker who ever lived. He's the greatest intuitive thinker ever lived. And he's trying to put words to, now this, we just read, what we read happened in real time. This is not something, this is something he wrote while it happened. This is why this is such a gift to us. It's portrayals of personified unconscious thoughts, and their sparseness is really beautiful. I like it that they're not as developed as the Red Book. This follows from their imagistic character, and they just seem to invite explanation. They call for reflection and interpretation. Well, that's what our role is as an ego, is to be the medium expression of these images, and also it invites explanation. There's an unasked question there. What do you think this means? Think about it. And it's always in this really magical script, which, as we learned, if you and this is just my own revelation, is that face of the bear that I keep showing all the time. It gets the same images that we get. I don't know if they're put in mystery plays, but I think that's why the psyche speaks in images, is because that's the way it spoke to our forebears before grammar developed. We start developing words and everything, and this image maker is very delighted, because now it can ask, what do you think this means? You have words. Why not use them, to try to amplify it? So the two things you can do is to be the medium of a nonverbal expression of it, which can be either through art or through dance or through sand play or through any other medium, music, or and then also, what do you think this means? So it invites explanation. Okay, now he's just going through each image and going to tell us a little bit about it. I don't think we're going to get through all of this, but it's set in an earthly depth. So he's just going through each aspect, and I think they're all interesting. So, it's his amplification. It invites explanation. What do you think it means? He's trying to say, what does it mean? So it's set in an earthly depth, the inner depths beneath the extension of the bright space of consciousness. Now remember, this is two or 3 weeks. He started to really get into mythology. Before, with Freud, he was involved more with repressed personal memories of the personal unconscious, which Freud thought was all that was all there was. He had done all these word association tests, so he knew that all these people who just deny stuff all the time, he can make it come out. Like the woman who unconsciously let her baby drink typhoid water so it would die, so that she could, because there was this very rich man in town, and she just was infatuated with him, but she thought she was below him. And so she married someone else. And then someone told her, and had, some kids, and someone told her, he's like a duke or some very important person. He said he was absolutely heartbroken when he heard that you'd gotten married, because he wanted to, he wanted you. And she was so stunned by it that she, let her baby drink the water, which there was like typhoid fever going through the town. The baby dies of typhoid fever. And then she goes tuberculosis because she went crazy. Young figures out her secret, So, I mean, he's dealt with Elaine Priceworth, his cousin, who, he knows the psyche is real to some extent, but not how real yet, So it's set in an earthly depth, the inner depths beneath the extension of the bright space of consciousness. Sinking into this depth means to avert our gaze from outer things and to focus on the dark depths. Now, what he really means is darkness itself. Close your eyes. See that little ball of light that forms and animate it with attention. That's not easy, but what I'm learning, I've been doing this for a while now, and is how to make it keep going, and how I totally screw it up by, I'm trying to get the balance between letting that ball of light speak to me and screwing it up because I screwed up. How do you animate the darkness with your concentrated gaze? It's not something that's innate, and to become a master at it, you just got to keep doing it, and find out what works and what doesn't work, and that's what I'm doing right now. I have gotten some just spectacular things I've never seen before, but there's no narrative to them. They're just, there's no anything other than just things I've never seen before, but true moving images that are interacting with me a little bit, but not greatly. Well, the one I had was where I was going through that tunnel, see the faces of every woman that ever lived, and then come at the end and there's the Great Mother. That I only had one that was that graphic, but anyway, you gazing at the darkness animates it, and since it's done without conscious expectation. Now here we're talking about eros. Since it's done without conscious expectation, it animates the psychic, the psychic background now has the opportunity to let its contents appear. If you do it with conscious expectation, then the psychic background does not have the opportunity to let its contents appear while you're awake. And this is the idea of you want it to happen while you're awake. And preceding events indicated that strong psychic movements were present that consciousness could not grasp. Now, he's talking about himself. Events preceding this had indicated to Jung himself personally strong psychic movements that consciousness could not grasp. These two figures emerge, an old sage and a young maiden, unexpectedly, but they seem to characterize the mythological spirit. And this means the depths itself. This is these personal. The old man is the spiritual principle of logos. The maiden is the unspiritual principle of feeling eros. Now he's going to try to explain what logos and eros are here. And I don't know whether when we're done, we'll understand ourselves, but let's try. Logos is one of Logos's descendants is nous, the intellect, but it has done away with the commingling of feeling, intuition, and sensation. But Logos retains the commingling. So when people tell you that Logos is just thinking, that's not true. Its descendant nous, the intellect, is just thinking. But what Jung is saying here is both Logos and eros commingle with intuition, sensation, feeling, and thinking. They possess all four. So they are whole, unlike us. Now, the difference between logos and eros is logos is form, eros is form filling. It fills the form, you know. Now, this is not going to be, this is where we're going to get the distinction between the feminine and the masculine, because they're not the same. What logos is form, and what eros is what fills the form, you know, where in the case of the feminine, it tends to be the vessel, you know, and in dreams and things. But and these are distinctions that maybe we'll wrap our heads around later better. But let's just talk about what he says here, that it is not the product of its blending of the four functions, which he calls the fundamental principles of life, of the fundamental activities of the soul. The fundamental activities of the soul are intuition, sensation, thinking, and feeling, all commingled into two principles: one form filling. Okay, so they have those two polarities, but they possess the fundamental activities of soul. Both of them do. And he says logos is the independent principle of form, meaning understanding, insight, foresight, legislation, and wisdom. And the old prophet Elijah possesses all these properties. So does Philemon. Now, eros is the principle that also commingles with all four fundamental activities of soul, just as and masters them. Its purpose, though, is completely different. It's not form giving, but form fulfilling. It's the wine poured into vessels. It's not the bed and the direction of the stream, but the impetuous. I love that word, impetuous. It's the careless free flowing. Okay, it's the careless free flowing of the water flowing in the direction, the bed and direction of the stream. So, and eros is desire. Now remember, logos was understanding, insight, foresight, legislation, and wisdom. Okay, eros is desire, longing, force, exuberance, pleasure, and suffering. Now combined, these are the fundamental activities of soul. Okay, but they absolutely require each other. So logos is the ordering and the insistent, and eros is the dissolution and movement. So the logos, its weakness is static. It's too static. You know, it doesn't move. Eros's weakness is it's not ordered and it's not persistent. It's dissolution and movement. But you need order and something that persists, and you need something that dissolves and moves too. I mean, this is a real mystery, but I mean, it's Jung is mentioning this because it's all contained in the mystery of Elijah and Salome. Okay, it's this two fundamental psychic powers that form a pair of opposites that absolutely require each other. The old prophet equals persistence, the young maiden equals movement. And they're both impersonal essences. And they possess a secret power that works just as much on human reason as on the soul. They possess a secret power. Okay, now this is any primordial. Did you have a question, Tim, or not? Or you're just going like this? Okay, yeah, it's just that primordial images possess a secret power that works just as much on our reason as on the soul. They stir something uh, uh, within us that's mysterious, long gone, and heavy with foreboding. So you can imagine when you're overwhelmed by any dream or vision that it is it's this secret power which works as much on our emotions as it does on our reason, because it demands an explanation. And it's also the mysterious, the long gone, the heavy with foreboding. And it is a musical string whose sounds and vibrations reverberate in every man's heart. Okay. Now, so that's why you can hear someone else's dream and it moves you as much as it moves them. You know, these primordial images dwell in everyone as they are property of all mankind. The secret power is like a spell, like magic, and causes elevation as much as seduction. Now, this kind of reminded me of your dreams, Tim. That line that it's involves elevation as much as seduction. The primordial images take hold of man wherever he is utterly human, and it's a power that seizes him as if a bustling throng was pushing him down the hallway. You know, it just seizes you, and this is if you let it do it. You know, if you let it lead you, that leads to development. If you let it drag you, it leads to regression. And to the young witch and the transformation through addiction. If you let it lead you, it leads to the transformation through spirit. It happens even if the individual's understanding and feeling rise up against it. And that's because we don't understand it. It's the consciousness is the world of the conscious thinking, the world of the ruling principle is really usually not is in opposition to this movement. So what is the power of the individual against the voice of the whole people within him? It entrances, it possesses, it consumes. Nothing makes this clearer than the serpent. It signifies everything dangerous and bad, everything that's threatening to consciousness, everything nocturnal and uncanny, and the power of the uncanny adheres as much to logos as it is to eros. So I think, at least me, myself, I think we don't understand logos and eros, really. We think we do, but we don't, so long as they adhere to logos as well as to eros, so long as they can work as the dark and unrecognized principles of the unconscious spirit. So in other words, they need to work in our what does this mean? This dialogue between the unrecognized principles of unconscious spirit and this great, beautiful ego that we developed through going to Harvard or to Kirkwood Community College or wherever we went to. We need to be in dialogue with this. Salome is represented as the daughter of, the house represents the fixed abode where logos and eros have permanent residence within us. That's where Elijah and Salome live. It's the house of wisdom. Salome is represented as the daughter of Elijah, expressing the order of succession. Now, this does not let's let it flesh out here. The prophet is her producer. She emanates from him. Now, this is only true for young. This is not generally true. We're going to find out that logos cannot produce eros, because eros is independent. But for young, eros is under the subjugation of logos. So that's what he's talking about himself here. The prophet is her producer. She emanates from him. That is, she is assigned to him as a daughter, indicates the subordinate position of eros to logos. Only in young, not generally, okay? That's not the general truth. Although this relation is very frequent, it possesses no general validity. Young actually recognizes this. It's only in him that this phenomena of Salome, or Eros being the daughter of the prophet, is true. As two opposed principles, Eros could not arise from Logos, and Logos couldn't arise from Eros. They developed, what is it they always say in the Nicene Creed? That they were born but not begotten, or I don't know exactly how to put it, but they coexist. They came into being at the same time. Salome thus is an incomplete embodiment of Eros, but a variety of her. Eros is, because Eros itself is not blind. She regulates just as much as Logos does, as all four fundamental activities of soul. So blindness is, Eros speaks eloquently, so she's not blind. Blindness indicates her incompleteness and the absence of an essential quality, and thus she depends on Logos, in young only. The indistinct glittering walls of the hall point to something unrecognized and valuable that wakens curiosity and attracts attention. He's continuing to develop these images. The creative involvement is woven even deeper into the image of walls and other aspects of the house, and gives this further animation of the dark background. And so it then comes, it gives rise to the image of an object which expresses concentration, which is the crystal, which is eternally used to produce images. So figures incomprehensible to the beholder, but evoke dark processes, come out of the crystal, in his soul, which to a certain extent lie even deeper. Now he's thinking then of the in here he had the vision of Eve, of the Odyssey, which is the adventure that comes from accepting the disobedient principle, with the principle being disobedient to the ruling principle leads to the adventure and leads to the king producing the new king. That's really what the three images say, that he had from the crystal. So the prophet is clear and complete in himself. But now here's the interesting thing about Salome, and here's the interesting thing about the whole vision. Who's the interesting person in the vision? It's not Elijah. It is to some extent, but it's Salome. She's far more surprising than Elijah is. Young's father was a parson, and his mother came from 7 different bishops. His whole family are a bunch of clerics, other than his illegitimate great-grandfather, who was Goethe. But anyway, so the blind Salome is the one, is the surprise. So that's, Jung says, that's why one may expect the formative process will first address the problem of eros. So Jung is saying the fact that the most startling figure in this vision is Salome indicates that his problem, Jung's problem, is to address the problem of eros. And so he talks about the image of Eve appears first together with the image of the tree and the serpent, and it refers to the temptation that is encapsulated already in the figure of Salome, who also tempts him. You know, I don't know how many of you have read the Red Book, the whole Red Book, but there's a scene in there where he goes to the house in the woods to ask for a room, and there's an old scholar there, and he takes a room there, and then some woman comes in his room, and she tempts him too, and he says that he does love her, but he's already married. And then as she's leaving, she says, "I bring you greetings from Salome." That was very beautiful, I thought. And it kind of ties these two visions together. Now, instead of Elijah and instead of Elijah transforms into Philemon, the one who honors gods in a God-forsaken world. That's who Elijah was somewhat the same way, because he dealt with, I don't remember if you remember the story, but the king, who I think was Ahab's wife, was Jezebel, and she started to bring in the prophets of Baal into Jerusalem, which worship bulls, and that's what Elijah was kind of prophesying against. But anyway, Philemon is the only one who recognizes Zeus and Hermes when they come to visit him. In fact, they're going to kill their only goose to feed Zeus and Hermes, who came to visit. Their only goose. And they only used it for eggs. And the goose knew also that Zeus and Hermes were gods. So the goose runs to them for protection. Isn't that interesting? But anyway, the idea here is that in the second vision, where the scholar is with the daughter, then we have Elijah with his daughter, and then we have Philemon and Baucus, where the figures of Elijah and Salome start to evolve in Jung's consciousness a little bit. Because Philemon has a more Hellenistic character of a pagan, where Elijah was this very biblical figure. So so Eve is encapsulated in the figure of Salome. Temptation brings about a further movement to the side of eros. So for Adam to move to the side of eros, he needs to be tempted. For Jung to move to the side of eros, which is neglected in him, he needs to be tempted by a seductress in the form of Salome, and who is has this strange relationship, which I don't really fathom yet, between with the announcer of the new God. Okay, so Jung is supposedly, the first water bearer, and the last fish, and Christ was the last ram and the first fish. So, that he's sort of he didn't really fulfill that role completely, but he wasn't. But just symbolically, you can use him for this purpose. This in turn forebodes many adventurous possibilities moving towards the side of eros, which was symbolized by Odysseus, and So the image stimulates and invites adventure. And then it's as if a door opens through the temptation to a new opportunity to free our gaze from the dark confinement of the depths where it is held fast. So it's a chance to rescue soul, who is trapped in the mire. Um, it's kind of interesting reading all this because Jung had not been introduced to alchemy later. If he had been, I think there'd be a lot different in some of these visions. Hence, the vision moves on to the sunny garden, where red blooming trees represent a development of erotic feeling. So, there is he's seeing a sort of a movement towards eros through this Salome figure. The cool water of the well, which does not inebriate, indicates logos. Salome later speaks of the deep wells of the prophet and suggests the development of eros is a source of knowledge. And with this, Elijah began to speak. So after she mentions to him that eros is a source of knowledge too, that's when Elijah begins to speak. And logos had the upper hand in Jung. And Elijah says he and his daughter have always been one, yet logos and eros are not one, but two. Logos has blinded and subjugated eros. We must first free eros from the clutch of logos so that the former will regain vision. For this, Salome turns to Jung because eros is in need of help. So Jung, she knows she can't get help from Elijah, so she turns to Jung for in need of help. And Jung thinks this is what enabled him to behold this image for precisely this reason. He, like Parsifal, was confronted with the Grail Castle, and that he's supposed to ask the healing question. Jung is given this mystery play to heal Salome. It's the whole purpose here. Can Jung heal Salome? Can Parsifal heal the wounded king? It's the purpose of both visions. So the soul of man is more inclined to logos than eros, which is more characteristic in women, and that's because I don't know. It's just women are the life bearer, and they bring things together. That the nurturers. Men will never be the life bearer. So I mean, they're sort of these disembodied creatures, a little bit from the earth, where the life bearer. Now, a woman can say, well, I don't want to be the life. I don't want to be confused with that. But I mean, that biologically, typically on the spectrum, it's just, in deep past, maybe not today. The subjugation of eros through logos explains not only the blindness of eros, but also that Salome, who denotes bad qualities, the murder of the Holy One, and in the case of her stepfather Herod, she apparently was incestuous with him. That it kind of says that she's not bad, she's just blind, because she's subjugated to logos. So she's not really, her bad qualities have to do with being subjugated to logos and being blind. Not eros in itself does not have these bad qualities. And then Jung goes in to talk. Now he's going to talk a little bit about I don't know. We can't get too much farther in this, but he's going to talk. This is, a semi-long essay. We're almost through it, but the psyche must have independent development. What is repressed, what our inferior function, it is a disunity in us, and it produces suffering. And to free ourselves from the suffering, we must accept that part of us that is the repressed part of the soul. And in Jung's case, it's Salome. He must love his inferiority. He must sin with her, and before that which is degenerated can resume development. And the sin is to disobey the ruling principle. She says to him, you can see the unfolding of all infinity. Isn't that worth a sin to you? Isn't that worth disobeying the ruling principle? So where logos is, there's order, but there's too much persistence. There's no development. It's an allegory of paradise where there's no struggle, no development, and movement is repressed, and its value is lost. And so the murder of the Holy One, Jung is like Herod. Logos cannot protect the Holy One. Herod could not protect the Holy One. Herod did not want to behead John the Baptist. He did it only under social pressure, really. Jung's anima has murdered the developing principle in him. Like Jung murders the highest principle in himself, which was Siegfried, which is his dominant function, and Salome murders the principle within him that is undeveloped, that needs to be developed, the announcement of the new God. I don't know, that's not really clear. Maybe we can make it more clear next time. So it's only disobedience against the ruling principle is the only way that leads out of the condition of undevelopment. Any fairy tale will tell us that. You don't follow the straight road. You let animal helpers help you, and they will lift the enchantment. They'll cure the curse or lift the enchantment. Well, anyway, that's enough, I think. Now we can just open it up to general discussion. We can talk about what we talked about, or anything. Why don't we just go in a row, and you can just tell us what's on your mind. How about you, Tim?
Well, I'm finding this a lot of food for thought. I'm curious about the Salome being blind. This is the first time I've heard that. My muse when I discovered her was blind, and I've always felt that she remained blind. And what you're talking about is she regains her sight when she becomes fully developed. And this gives me reason to hope that my muse might find her sight eventually if I give her enough attention.
Yeah. Well, I'm not exactly sure. We'd have to talk about your situation, but in Jung's case, what he's saying, she's blind. She's an incomplete image of the unconscious, of the eros principle, because she is under the subjugation of the ruling principle. So in your case, and I don't say it is, but that would be the first thing I would say as far as an analogy, is that is your anima blind because she's under the subjugation of your dominant function. You know, I mean, do you have any thoughts on that? I'm not saying that's true, but what would you say if as an analogy?
Well, that's one possibility. Jan just put in the chat that W.H. Auden felt that he had to kill or sacrifice his art, or be willing to anyway, like Abraham had to be willing to sacrifice Isaac in order to enter a new frontier. And one of the elements of my mystical vision quest last winter was that I realized I had to sacrifice my art. And so I need to spend some time thinking about that, what that means. Because obviously, art making is part of my being in the world, so I can't really give it up. But I do feel like I could sacrifice what that means to me. So, so there's a lot of food for thought there. It's very fascinating stuff.
It's kind of like Aurora Consurgens, you know, the visions of and his name's escaping me now. He was a scholastic that wrote Aurora Consurgens, or supposedly did. You know,
isn't that Louise von Franz that wrote that?
Yeah, well, she translated it, but he was this scholastic who burned all his work after he'd had this vision, and then suddenly, you know, he's a very famous. Geez, I can't remember why.
Oh.
But I mean, it's sort of like what W.H. Auden said, that he experienced this new birth through Aurora Consurgens. But anyway, it's what is it we need to sacrifice? What ruling principle do we need to sacrifice? Now that ruling principle can be in service to the new development, but it needs to sacrifice itself before that can happen. And we're going to talk about that next time, about what it means to develop the undeveloped. Gary, do you have any comments?
Yeah, so
or anything about anything?
right. At one point, Elijah says, you know, we have always been one, to Young in the dream. And so is he referring, does that also refer back to like John the Baptist and Salome, when Salome calls for his head?
Well, yeah. Now remember, Young says at the end, very end of this entry in the Black Books, that John the Baptist, Elijah, Salome, and him are all one. They're all one being, you know. I mean, and that was just making. He was saying that the fact that they were all one, and that Salome told him this, that they are all one, and later tells him he's the son of Mary, he's the son of the Mother of God, is that she's the hand of God, you know. So it is a great mystery, but you know, the fact that it's just so mind-boggling that Elijah and John the Baptist are the same person, according to Jesus in the New Testament, and that Salome is his daughter, and that Young is also is to marry her, or to unite with her, in order for the new thing to develop, whatever it is. Yeah, this is a great. Now, this is one of those things he describes that pushes us down the hall. You know,
Yeah,
that bustling throng that we might not really understand it, but I feel I'm being pushed down the hall by something.
well, how deep was he into alchemy when he did this?
Probably hardly at all.
So it can't really, I mean, it doesn't sound like an alchemical thing then, which is what I was first thinking. I thought maybe this is like the unification.
It's
an
got alchemical elements, and he remember he had dreams that he was trapped in the 16th century. That he goes into something and the door slams, and they said, "Whoops, now we're trapped in the 16th century." By the way, the one who wrote Aurora Consurgens supposedly was Thomas Aquinas. So anyway, he's a scholastic scholar and gave up everything.
How far was he into dialoguing? Like where you dialogue with the various parts of yourself, because I mean, these things seem to be actually happening to him.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like true psychosis. But I wonder, did he have any philosophy of dialoguing and stuff at the time that he
Well,
wrote?
he kept a journal until 1902, when he married Emma Young, and they moved into the Bergolzi. He stopped making entries in his journal, which had some qualities of the Black Book, but then the Black Book. So they were more dream journals, but the Black Book is the first place, I think, where he goes up. My soul, where are you? I mean, he's asking this to this, trying to animate the darkness.
Right.
So I mean, this is what Lance Owens, calls the discovery of the science of visioning. Is what we're reading here. Of course,
Jan mentions that Aquinas, in his Confessions, did major dialoguing. So maybe
yes,
that's where that came from.
Well, and Gerhard Dorn's dialogues are some of the most beautiful in the history. I mean, they're so rich too.
May I?
Well,
when William James was at his helm, and also afterwards, introspection was a dominant way of knowing psychology. Like people would just sit and write and write and write whatever thoughts they come, and that was from the history of psychology. I think that was the era of introspection when these things were happening to Dr. Jung too.
Yeah, well, it is. You remember, this is about his 12th entry in the Black Book, so he's getting into it. But he, as they said about Parsifal, he learns slowly, but well. I think Jung learns very fast and very well too. I mean, because in just a few entries, we're going to go into just absolute wonderland here. Well, why don't we just keep going through, and of course, just talk about anything you want. Jordy, did you have anything to say? Yeah, unmute yourself if you can. Go ahead. Or you're muted. Let's see if I can unmute you. Let's see here. Okay, where are you? Let's see if I can unmute. Oh, no, I just muted you again. There we go. Okay, come on. How do we? Yeah. There. Okay, it should be okay now.
Hello, do you listen to me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't have the black books yet, because the Spanish edition, the trilingual edition, will come up next January or early February.
Do you mind getting it in English?
No, I'll appreciate.
Okay, I'll get it. I'll get it to you in English.
I'll thank you very much, because I want the thick physical experience. You have to touch that. My experience with the Red Book was extremely powerful there.
Yeah. Now, in the Black Books, there's two things. There's one vision that's just text, and the other one has the actual pages of the Black Book, which are written in German. And I don't know. I eventually just got rid of all the photostatic copies of the German, because it took too much, of this. But I'll get you a copy, Jordy.
If you have the digital part of the English text, I'll appreciate very much.
Okay, I will get that for you. Sure.
The experience with the Red Book, I am taking the risk of being taken for frivolous now, is to use it as a synchronicity antenna, to open a page at random, read a bit here and there, or look at the image. Often it was extremely powerful, especially with guests. It was a strange vessel of not meaning, of agitating inner meaning for the one there. It's the first time I comment that to anyone. I mean,
Yeah, it is. I was just telling Gary earlier that since reading the red books and reading the black books and doing some of the like Hillman and Anna Marjula and Gerard de Narval and the Living Symbol and stuff, and then I go back and I read Ion and things like that. It's like a complete. It opened up to me. It was I just have this idea now that I can. I just am able to see it in a way that I never saw it before. But I mean, I think, and also too, it stimulates my dreams and my visions. If you read the black books, I mean, what I know, I had my analyst told me to read a fairy tale before I went to bed. But I think it does animate our. I really do think that what you're saying is absolutely true.
The fairy tale thing is to prime and stimulate your inner things, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, if you do, I mean, because it usually possesses all four functions.
Yeah.
It's there's just something about it that is speaks to us, and I think the red books do that as well. I think the thing you'll find about the black books is they, at least when they're doing visioning and dialogue, they're absolute, so immediate that it's for anybody that's doing active imagination, it's very instructive. So.
Just a passing comment concerning, you mentioned a couple of times in today's session the I Ching.
Yeah.
I Ching, well, how do you say in English? I Ching?
Either way. Yeah.
I have been using it for ages. I have it somewhere there. But I know people who the book talk to them absolutely with the clarity of a general practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
If you do that, what's going to happen to you is that. And I mean, I'm talking about medical doctors or say health professionals, which is the type of thing you don't talk normally in your hospital or your health center, unless there is a high element of trust. And I know a couple of them that say it depends a lot on how you frame the question, but can be as handy as an algorithm. I don't know if that's consistent with your experience. I am not interested in algorithming my decision making here, more a general quest for wisdom or insight. And insight-wise, I King is not that clear to me in terms of raises that you have unsolved issues, but not much more than that. No?
It just so uncanny with me. I mean, the fact that I'll get all yins, 6 of them, 3 changing lines, or I'll get all yangs with 6 of them with 3 changing lines consecutively. I mean, and it happens too much. And so in my early active imaginations, I wanted to find the one who chose the hexagrams, and I would sometimes see a door with light in it, but nothing ever happened.
So you were for the hidden hand somehow.
Yes, the hidden hand. I was looking for the hidden hand, and I never saw
This
it.
might
But that was my first, real impetus, along with, just some, a little bit of suffering that I was having,
Yeah.
and it really, that was my introduction to active imagination, just because it was so uncanny, Well, Marina, we better get everybody in here before we try to. Marina, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you were telling us before?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't very exciting, really, but it was exciting. It's just I was sharing my experience of trying to engage in active imagination and illuminating the darkness. And I was just having this experience where I was lying in bed and I was trying to do this and nothing was happening. And then I looked out of my window and a perfectly formed wolf in the shape of a cloud kind of just got blown across my field of vision. And it was quite powerful, really. And then, so that was the form. So based on the things you've been saying, Craig, that was the form. The form was the wolf moving quickly in reverse. And so now I'm left with the task of creating the form filling, the meaning. I really enjoyed that little part of the discussion, thinking about soul's activities being held together by the four functions and then them dividing into form and form filling. And that's like experience and meaning.
Yes.
And that's what I'm digesting at the moment. So I'm thinking about the wolf, and that's yeah.
Well, the wolf is very particularly, I think it's closer to us than the cat is, or something. I don't know. It just has a feeling to me of familiarity because of the dog. So we're close to the dog, we're close to the wolf. But the thing I think that you're mentioning about the form and the form filling, is a great clue to me about what the anima and the animus are, too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not doesn't define it for me, but so we know that the if you're a man, you tend to lack form filling things, and if you're a woman, you need to have meaning. I don't know. I'm not saying that's true. I always get in trouble when I go there, but So anyway, thank you. Kevin, how about you? You always have some interesting comments.
Yeah, I do feel like logos and eros is one. I never separated them. I feel like if you have a logos, in the shadow there is eros. I feel like logos is a shadow, or eros is a shadow of logos. Logos is a shadow of eros. It's like drawing hexagram. Even if you have, let's say, creative heaven, the receptive earth does not. It's still somewhere in the background. It doesn't sort of. It doesn't vanish. It's just in the background. Yeah, so I can relate when Jung says that Elijah, Salom, I don't know how to pronounce it, Salomon, and Jung
Salome or Salome or
Salome, yeah. When Elijah and Salome and Jung, when he says sort of, I understand. What I get from this is that they are one, in that the logos is creative spirit that impregnates the soul. It can also be a symbol of collective unconscious, which then give birth to ego. So they're never separated in that sense, I feel like. So there is a thread running through this. Yeah, that's all I have.
Okay. Well, how about you, Adam? just talk. What are you up to, Adam? And what do you want to report to the world about what's going on with you, or
Good question.
anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, I'm sort of in and out on this meeting. I don't know, the synchronicities are there, and things are impacting me as they come in. And I guess where I am is like I need some sort of really deep transformation, and it doesn't seem to come from the outside. And on the other hand, it's like a well, which seems to be completely dry. So for how long is that going to be the case? I don't know, but it's, and I suppose that nobody in this universe can tell me. That's where I am.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I go through those dry periods too, and I struggle against them. Actually, when it's totally nothing happens, the next day I come gritting my teeth, and I want to talk to the nothing whichever happens. I want to talk to, is the nothing that never, or the thing that never happens here, so then I kind of, I force it to happen. I will force it to, I'll have a dialogue with it, whether it likes it or not, I mean, and then of course, the thing that we can also do is, just spend some time, at least. The one thing that you can always do, that will always be fruitful, is to just take your dream and go ask a voice within you, what does this mean? What does that mean? Just with your any genuine content of the unconscious, like I have these dreams that are just so ordinary, it's just like laughable, and then I just ask, what does this mean? What does that mean? And it does help me a little bit to get things moving a little bit. Well, Idris, why don't we let Carlos and some of the other people talk first, and then we can come back to you.
Okay, no problem. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm just so that because we haven't heard anything. Carlos, do you have any comments about anything you want to talk about or not? You don't have to say anything, but if you do, just unmute yourself. And unless you can't unmute yourself, then I can try to unmute you. But anyway, how about now? I don't know. Visitor is all you're identified as. Did you want to say anything or not? Okay.
No, thank you. I'm
Okay.
listening and enjoying.
All right.
Thank
Sure.
you.
Thank you. How about Achilles or Dawn? I know you like to, and Jan, you like to stay a little bit, in the chat. That's fine. Don't worry about it. Okay. Hi, Charles. You're in a little late. We're not really doing anything in particular, but do you can you tell us? So you can just tell us anything that is going on with you. What's going on with you?
I guess I haven't been sleeping as well recently, so I haven't been remembering as many dreams and not recording them as much. But one thing I noticed, I noticed very plainly, is the lack of attention towards my dreams resulted in them being very mundane and very just like they were like saying like, oh well, are you really interested? Because now I'm just going to start to give you these really boring, dull dreams that don't seem to be much of anything. And you get like that the more I did not pay attention to them. And so that's kind of what I'm dealing with right now. And I'm starting to write them down again. I had a little bit of a gap. I think all my inner work right now really revolves around my dreams. Because, I'm in the situation where I'm trying to actually have some sort of outer life for the first time. So I think my work's revolving around my dreams for sure right now.
Well, that will feed them too. And also maybe they're telling you that your outer life's more important right now. But also in my own case, when you're saying, like, if I don't pay any attention to my dreams, they do sink back into the depths, especially if you've been doing active imagination and you break off for a while, everything goes back. It's just everything that had come up to the surface is now submerged again, where we can hardly talk to each other. So then you have to kind of bring it back up through constant attention. So I just see that daily inner work, if you don't do it, you lose a lot from the break. Well, we've got a few minutes left. Idris, did you? Are you doing anything? I know you weren't feeling very well, and for a while.
Yeah, I'm feeling much better than before. So much improvement. Thank you for asking.
Mm-hmm.
I did follow some of the lessons by Skip about tarot, and they opened like a big amount of psyche's information. I tried to jot down like a certain beginning of the day or meeting a person that I didn't understand the whole situation very well, and one name of tarot. And in time, through weeks or second meeting of that person or all that, the information comes out and it really matches the tarot. So I have never done I Ching before, but that does actually bring. And I also remember this Indian way of looking at the world where the sun is representing the male spirit of the universe, giving life, but the female is actually the earth, where moon with its cycles actually brings out all the juices from earth like soma, and the vegetation develops and females eat it and it becomes female body. And then sun, through its activity, which is very predictable, like logos, the 365 and whatever hours, it's very predictable movement, brings like the warmth on earth and the cold cycle, but all this gravitation of moon brings the plants out. So the female arrows could be like full of movement, how plants develop and all the mud after the rain and they're drying up at different shapes, while sun as the very predictable life force, it only has like certain shapes and that it allows life to go through, but with their like combination together, human life develops. So a female would not have anything without the male spirit power, while the male would not even have his own body without the female being so attached to earth and preparing the food and knowing food so well and nurturing and giving her own body to her children through pregnancy and nursing. So it just connects the Eros logos very much through those images to me, because when these things were written down, science was not developed, but people were very intuitive back in the days.
Oh, yeah,
also, one small request for me, it would be really huge favor if you could share with me also the English version of it.
Yes, I will get it. I'll get it to you in just right after the meeting. I have to take the dogs for a walk, but after that, I'll get it to you. Okay.
I found my Adler copy. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Okay. Well, has anybody got any last words of wisdom, or anybody? Well, let me just tell you what we'll do next time. We're just going to finish the Jung's essay, which is going to have some very interesting things about what it means to develop the inferior function and what it means in terms of this mystery play of Elijah and Salome. which I think he's fleshed out really well. I just hope I've fleshed it out, because it really speaks to me. Maybe I'll be able to restate it a little more clearly next time, but it's just so unbelievably rich. And then after that, we'll maybe just go back to that 12:20 dialogue, and then we'll move forward. And you know, I think we're moving a little bit slowly, but I would say that it's kind of reminds me of that the universe is in a grain of sand. You know, I mean, sometimes if you spend a little bit more time on these things, I just feel I'm learning a lot more by doing it kind of at a leisurely pace. But we could just race through it, but I don't think we'd learn anything. And it is a long book too, so we can take breaks on it and, for a month or so and do something else too, if anybody wants to just take a short break from it. But anyway, we'll see you all next time, and I'll resend out the selections we're reading from the Black Books. And thank you, everybody. We'll see you next Sunday. Goodbye. Really appreciate it.
See ya.
Okay, bye, Charles.